Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine being invisible your entire life, not because you were hard to notice, but because everyone around you chose not to. You've worked harder, fought more, and achieved everything on your own, but the applause is always for someone else. For years, that's how Evelyn lived, always in the shadow of her twin sister Sophie, always overlooked, always second place. But what happens when you finally break free from the cage built by your own family's expectations? What happens when the person you've been fighting for, your entire life, is you? This is a story about resilience, self-worth, and the painful truth that sometimes, even the people we love the most will never see us for who we truly are. Stay with us as Evelyn's journey unfolds and she discovers that the only approval she needs is her own. Let's dive in. Evelyn stood in front of the cracked mirror in her tiny Brooklyn apartment, her fingers trembling as they adjusted the strap of her worn-out bag. The sunlight filtered through the half-drawn blinds, casting soft shadows on the hardwood floors that creaked beneath her feet. It had been a long time since she allowed herself to think about where she came from. But today something felt different. Her heart still raced at the thought of the award ceremony she had attended just weeks ago. The applause, the bright lights, the unmistakable sense of accomplishment, it had been everything she had worked for. But in the aftermath, something had shifted within her. That night, when she sat alone in her apartment with the trophy in her hands, her mind had wandered back to her childhood. She couldn't help but wonder, had she truly won, or was she still seeking approval from a family that never truly saw her? Her sister Sophie had never been far from her thoughts, even in the quiet moments. Sophie, the golden child, the one who always seemed to have it all: love, attention, the world at her feet. While Evelyn worked 3 jobs, barely scraping by, Sophie was effortlessly bathed in praise. It was like watching someone walk through life with an invisible crown, while Evelyn stumbled behind, invisible to everyone but herself. But then came the unexpected twist, the email. Congratulations, Evelyn Brooks. You've been selected for the Benjamin Ford National Fellowship. The words had been surreal, a prize she never expected, a recognition she didn't think she deserved. In that moment, she realized that her journey had been more than just about the fellowship. It was about the years of struggle, the endless nights of self-doubt, the quiet triumphs that no one had seen. She had finally found the courage to step out of the shadows and into her own light. Sophie had never understood her drive. Evelyn had spent her entire life being overlooked, while Sophie was always at the center of everything. Their parents had never truly cared about her accomplishments. Her mother's congratulatory words were always saved for Sophie's latest social media post or her new yoga course. Even now, as Evelyn achieved something monumental, their responses were cold, distant, almost dismissive. It was as if nothing Evelyn did could ever compare to Sophie's sparkling existence. But the real test came when Sophie called her that evening, a soft tremor in her voice that Evelyn wasn't used to hearing. "I just saw your speech," Sophie said, her words tentative. "I didn't think you were that good." Evelyn felt a pang in her chest, a familiar sting. There it was again, the acknowledgement that was never quite enough, the subtle belittling that had shaped so much of their relationship. But this time, Evelyn didn't feel the need to argue. She had long since stopped fighting for Sophie's approval. The girl who had once lived in the shadows of her twin was no longer desperate for recognition. She had learned, painfully, that some people would never see her, not because she wasn't worthy, but because they were too wrapped up in their own world to notice. She took a deep breath and replied, her voice steady but full of quiet conviction. "I don't need you to understand. I don't need anyone to understand anymore. I'm not doing this for you, Sophie. I'm doing it for me." The line went silent, the weight of her words hanging between them. Sophie had no response. Evelyn ended the call without saying goodbye. The emptiness she felt was no longer one of longing, but of finality. The chapter with her family, especially with Sophie, had closed. There was no more trying to prove herself. She had won the greatest battle, the battle for her own self-worth. But as Evelyn lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, something else stirred within her. There was a secret she had been hiding, even from herself, a truth that had been buried for years. The fellowship, the success, all the years of hard work, it was all a way to fill the hole left by her family's indifference. She had been running from the past, but now she realized it was time to face it. She had never truly healed from the years of neglect, the feelings of being invisible, not just to her family, but to herself. And now, as she stood at the pinnacle of her career, she had to ask herself, what happens when the recognition you've always wanted is finally yours, but it doesn't bring the closure you expected? Evelyn knew the answer was something deeper, something far more complicated than she had ever imagined. She wasn't just building a career or a reputation. She was rebuilding herself, piece by piece, layer by layer. And the truth was, she wasn't done yet. There was still so much left to confront. Have you ever felt like you were invisible, no matter how hard you tried to be seen? How would you feel if the one person you've always wanted approval from never gave it to you? As Evelyn stood at the edge of a new chapter, ready to accept her success without the validation of those who had never truly seen her, she realized that the real journey had only just begun. Would she finally be able to heal the wounds of her past? Or would the silence of her family continue to haunt her, no matter how far she went? The answers were just ahead, if only she dared to face them. And so, with a deep breath and a heart full of quiet resolve, she turned toward the future, knowing that the road ahead was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: she would walk it alone, on her own terms. Evelyn sat at her small kitchen table, the morning sun streaming in through the window, casting a golden glow across her coffee cup. The city outside hummed with life, but inside, she felt a strange stillness, a void that was growing louder, more undeniable with every passing day. It wasn't the empty messages from her family or the silence that followed Sophie's half-hearted apology. It was something deeper, something she had been avoiding for years. She had built her life on the belief that independence and self-worth were all she needed. But as she looked at her reflection in the coffee cup, her face, calm but distant, she realized the truth that had been quietly nagging at her heart. She hadn't really freed herself from the past. She had just buried it. The weight of everything she had left behind, the hurt, the yearning for acceptance, the fractured pieces of her childhood, had never truly been addressed. She had kept moving forward, one foot in front of the other, building a career, earning respect, crafting a life she could be proud of. But it was all in a vacuum. Without acknowledging what had been done to her, what she had lost, and what she had never had a chance to heal from, she could never fully escape the past. The phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the silence. It was a message from Sophie. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. I hope you're doing okay." Evelyn stared at the screen, her fingers frozen above the keys. Her heart wavered, torn between the instinct to reply with a simple, "I'm fine," or to unleash everything that had been building inside her for so long. But what was the point? Sophie would never truly understand. She would never see the cracks in Evelyn's heart, the scars left by a lifetime of being invisible. Her mind wandered back to that night in New York. The lights, the applause, the success, all of it had been a dream come true, but it had also come with an unexpected realization. Success didn't fill the hole inside her. It just made it easier to ignore. But the loneliness remained. The feeling of being disconnected from the world she had worked so hard to be a part of. Sophie's message sat there, blinking on the screen. She didn't know how to feel about it. "I hope you're doing okay." Was it genuine concern or another way of pushing her aside? A polite acknowledgement, but nothing more. Evelyn had spent so much time trying to make people see her, trying to prove that she was worthy, but she had never truly stopped to ask herself, why did I care so much? She had wanted their approval, her mother's, her father's, Sophie's, because, deep down, she thought it would make her feel whole. But now, In the quiet of her apartment, surrounded by success, she felt the emptiness more than ever. Was she just chasing an illusion, a dream that had been carefully crafted by the people who never saw her for who she really was? The phone buzzed again. Are you ever coming back? We miss you here. Things are different with you gone. It was from her dad. Her first instinct was to ignore it, to keep moving forward. But as she looked out the window at the bustling streets, something inside her shifted. Maybe it wasn't about moving forward. Maybe it was about facing the truth. She had run from her family, from their favoritism, from their neglect. She had found herself, built a life, but in doing so, she had closed off the most important part of herself, the part that needed healing. What if this was the moment she had been waiting for? The moment she could finally heal, finally confront the ghosts that had followed her through every achievement, every victory. Her heart ached with the thought of going back, of sitting face to face with the family who had never truly seen her. The thought terrified her. But the truth was, she had to face them, or face the fact that she had spent her whole life running away from something she couldn't escape. Evelyn stood up, pacing across her apartment, her mind racing. She wasn't the same person she was when she left. She was stronger, more confident, but the walls she had built around herself had become just as suffocating as the ones she had escaped. It wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about acknowledging the hurt, about accepting that the pain of her past didn't define her, but that it still had a hold on her. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed out a response to her father. I don't know if I can come back. I need to face this on my own terms, but I'll try. The words felt heavier than they should. A promise to confront what had been buried for so long. The thought of returning to the house where everything had started felt like walking into a trap. But the longer she thought about it, the more she realized this wasn't about them. It was about her. Her phone rang. It was Sophie again. Evelyn hesitated for a moment before answering. Her sister's voice was soft, almost tentative. I don't know how to do this, Ev. I don't know how to be the person I should be. I've been so caught up in trying to be the one they loved, and I missed everything that was right in front of me. Evelyn listened quietly. She wanted to be angry, to lash out at Sophie for everything she had done. But instead, she found herself holding her breath, listening to the cracks in her sister's voice. It wasn't just Sophie who had been lost, it was them both, lost in a world they had never chosen, a world built on expectations that neither of them could meet. I'm sorry, Ev. I thought I was doing what they wanted, but I think I was just trying to fill a hole inside me. I was trying to make them proud, but I see now that it wasn't the right way. For the first time, Evelyn didn't know how to respond. She had spent so many years angry, so many years wishing Sophie would see her, would understand. But now the realization hit her like a wave. Sophie had been trapped in the same cage she had been. Do you think Evelyn is ready to face the truth? Or is she risking it all for something that might not heal her? What will it take for Evelyn to finally let go of her past and create a future where she no longer feels invisible? As the conversation ended and the phone call faded into silence, Evelyn felt a weight lift from her chest. The healing had begun, but it wasn't going to be easy. She was finally going back to the one place she had sworn she'd never return to, but it was no longer to seek their approval. It was to find herself in the place where everything had started. And as she stared at the empty space before her, she realized something else. Maybe healing wasn't about them at all. It was about finding peace within herself, no matter who had abandoned her. She packed a bag, her thoughts now clearer than they had ever been. It wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. Where will this journey take Evelyn? Can she finally break free from the past and embrace the future she's worked so hard for? Evelyn stood at the front door of her childhood home, the familiar wooden frame worn by years of use, the ivy creeping up the sides like a silent witness to all the memories locked inside. The air smelled faintly of lavender, a reminder of her mother's attempts to create a comforting home, even if the warmth she sought never quite reached Evelyn. The house hadn't changed. The furniture was still arranged the same way, the worn-out carpet where she and Sophie used to play. And yet, everything felt different. She hesitated, hand on the door handle, her heart thudding against her ribs. She hadn't set foot in this house for years, not since she had left everything behind. Her parents had always told her she was strong, that she didn't need anyone. But she had been wrong all these years. She had needed them. She had needed to be seen, to be loved, even if it was just once. That's what had driven her, that desperate desire to prove her worth. And now, here she was, ready to confront the past, to speak the words that had been buried deep inside her for too long. She was no longer the girl who would accept being invisible. She was someone else now, someone stronger, someone who had found the courage to look inside herself and say, "I am enough." The door creaked open, and there they were. Her mother, her father, and Sophie, sitting around the same old dining table where they had shared so many dinners, but not once had they ever truly shared their hearts. They looked up as Evelyn entered, and for the first time she didn't feel like an intruder. She didn't feel small. She felt whole. Her mother was the first to speak, her voice softer than Evelyn remembered. "Evelyn, it's so good to see you," she said, though there was a hesitance in her tone, as if unsure of how to bridge the gap that had formed over the years. Evelyn met her gaze, her voice calm but firm. "I didn't come here for a warm welcome. I came here to talk, to finally say the things I've kept locked away." Her father, usually the silent observer, looked up from his paper. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, maybe regret, maybe guilt, but whatever it wasn't enough to move him. He simply nodded, waiting for her to continue. Sophie sat quietly, her usual confidence replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. I've been thinking a lot about everything, Eve. I'm sorry. For everything." The words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Evelyn felt a pang in her chest. She had spent so long wanting Sophie to apologize, to acknowledge the pain, but now that it was here, it didn't feel like enough. The years of neglect, the moments she had waited for validation, none of it could be undone with a few words. Evelyn took a deep breath. "It's not enough, Sophie. It's not enough to just say you're sorry. You never saw me. You never saw what I was going through, what I needed. And I carried that weight for so long. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself enough, you'd finally look at me. But you never did." Sophie's eyes welled with tears, and for the first time, Evelyn saw her sister not as the perfect, untouchable figure, but as a woman who was also broken. "I thought I was doing everything right. I thought if I could just make them proud, I could fix everything. But I didn't even know what I was fixing. And I've lost you because of it." Evelyn's heart softened, but the bitterness lingered. "You weren't the problem, Sophie. It was them. It was them telling me I didn't need anything, that I didn't deserve love or attention. You didn't make me feel invisible. They did." The words were out now, and Evelyn could feel the weight lifting from her chest. She hadn't realized how much she had been carrying until this very moment. She had come here seeking answers, but instead, she had found something far more important, her own truth. Her mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat, eyes averted. "We thought you didn't need anything, Evelyn. We thought you were fine on your own. We didn't realize how much we were hurting you." The tears Evelyn had kept hidden for so long began to surface, but she wiped them away quickly. "You were wrong," she said, her voice steady. "I needed you. I needed you to see me. I needed you to care." There was a long silence, and for the first time, Evelyn didn't feel the need to fill it. She had said what needed to be said. The years of silence and unspoken hurt had finally found their voice. Her father finally spoke, his voice low, almost hesitant. "We failed you, Evelyn. I failed you." He paused, looking directly at her, his expression a mixture of regret and sorrow. "I should have seen it. I should have done something. I'm sorry, I can't change the past, but I want to try to make it right." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, the weight of his words hit her like a tidal wave. She had always craved this, but now that it was here, it didn't feel as satisfying as she had imagined. It was too late. The past had already been written, but the future? That was still hers to write. She looked at her family, seeing them not as the people who had hurt her, but as the people who had shaped her into the woman she had become. I don't need you to make it right. I've already done that on my own. Her mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears. What do you need then, Evelyn? What can we do to make this better? Evelyn looked around the room, the weight of the years heavy in the silence. I need to walk away. I need to live for myself, not for anyone else's expectations. I can't stay here, waiting for something that may never come. I've learned that I don't need your approval anymore. I need my own. Sophie stood up, taking a step toward her. But we're your family. We're here. You're not alone. Evelyn smiled, a bittersweet smile. I've never been alone, not really. I have myself now, and that's all I need. She turned and walked toward the door, her steps steady and sure. She had come to face the past, but now she was ready to leave it behind. The door closed softly behind her, and as she stepped out into the world, she realized that she had finally found the freedom she had always longed for. What do you think of Evelyn's journey? Do you believe she made the right choice by walking away? Or should she have tried harder to heal her relationship with her family? If you enjoyed this story, type 100 in the comments. Where are you watching from? Feel free to share this video with your friends. Thank you for watching the Life Stories channel.